if you look out at the silo sometime this evening, there's a green and blue ball that's about as big as me. It's about this big. It's a canvas. It's an earth ball. They're used for games, cooperative games and group games in camps and in school systems and even in armies. You know, I've heard of people that were, you know, they were on army bases and they use it for slaughter ball. They're like volleyball. And I had been an assistant in a children's camp when I was in my early 20s, and they made me the game guy because I had this high squeaky voice. And I liked the ball so much that when the woman who actually had been a teacher and got it from the school that she worked for because it was a liability, didn't want to have it anymore, it was in her basement, she was just dragging it around, and called me up and said, I'm throwing the world away tomorrow unless you come get it. So I saved the world, and when my son turned 7 years old, we were having a birthday party, and I figured, oh, I'll pump up the world. So we inflated the world, and it was too big for the yard. So we went to the local park. I live in Louisville, Kentucky, which isn't quite as wide open as this. It's was about a half a mile away from the house, so we just went to play in the park, and that was so much fun that me and my son and I, however you would say it, kept going to the park for a couple months. Every time we would go to the park, someone would ask me the question invariably, where are you from, what is your cause, what are you doing, this is a great idea. And I'd say, well, I'm just playing with my son. Now, to back up a little, my mother died at the age of 54 from diabetes, complications from diabetes. She had surgery on her legs and lost a toe because she didn't have good circulation, and it was eventually congestive heart failure. And she was a state representative, so she was busy taking care of everybody else. Right before she passed away, she wanted to go in, 2 days before she passed away, she was all concerned about getting out so she could go testify for the miners in Kentucky and Pike County. But, she succumbed to diabetes. So, and I know my mom, she would eat lots of great food and cook lots of great food. And she was German, so she ate rich food. And she didn't exercise because she would be in her 80s, and refined women just didn't sweat. So the only time she would get exercise is to go and do marathons to raise money for the March of Dimes, which is like or the Corsairs, stuff like that. So a couple months went by, like I said, and a reporter came to ask me, some questions because he'd known my mom and had a column, and the question came up, if I was going to walk, like people suggested, what would I do it for? And it was pretty much a no-brainer watching my mom, doing such good and succumbing to the disease of diabetes. So I got with the American Diabetes Association, and back last century I walked 160 miles once to promote their Diabetes Awareness Week, which is now like a day every year, but every spring they would have a Diabetes Awareness Week. So to cover that week, I said, well, I'll walk from Louisville to Lexington, which was 80 miles away, and well, since it's only going to take me 4 days, an average of 20 miles a day, because I was young and dumb and didn't know how far I could get rolling the world, I said, well, I'll walk back too, because that was when Forrest Gump first came out. So I figured, well, I'll just walk back. So I did it, and it was in March, and so I walked in the rain and the sleet and the cold, and it was real successful. So I wanted to do it again. That didn't happen. I needed to raise my family. My son was 8 then, and so now he's 20, and for the past 3 or 4 years, I've been walking with my little dog. He's an 80-pound brown dog, and we've walked this is our 5th trip, and we've walked in 24 states and over 2,600 miles. Last year we walked from Washington, D.C. through the Northeast to Maine, zigzagging our way through the 10 states in the Northeast. We walked to Rhode Island, and then I walked in New York City, and I walked the Boston Marathon route in the heat of summer with a dog in the world. So it's a world record, 47 hours, 1 minute. We stayed at a couple firehouses. I stay at firehouses or a Walmart or something with, I've got this purple support van with nobody in it, so I meet my support team. I call it the good people system. So I'll meet any of you would be my support team for the day, and either bring me water to be nice, or then would drive me back to my van, and I would bring it up to here like half the day. Nice Mr. Maintenance Bob gave me a ride. So now that I've walked in 24 states, my goal is to step foot in or skirt the edge of the other lower 48. So I've kind of gotten all of the East Coast. This winter I walked from Fort Lauderdale to Savannah, and then from Myrtle Beach up into North Carolina. That completed my East Coast, and I've kind of got a stab through the middle because I walked from Kentucky to Kansas, and then to honor my I haven't mentioned my uncle. He's also diabetic. He's been diabetic since his 40s, like my mother, and he was turning 80, so I decided to honor his crowning achievement of staying alive for 4 decades with diabetes, which is a very bad disease, by the way. If your kids don't know what it is, your parents may want to tell you later. And so I climbed to the top of Pikes Peak. They didn't let me go up the road of Pikes Peak. I had to go up the bar trail, which usually takes backpackers about 14 hours. It took me 3 days.
Oh, wow.
And just like diabetes, I needed help at the top. You can't, survive for 40 years without a little help from your friends. And once I got to the top, and I had altitude sickness and couldn't breathe and was trying to drag the world up sharp rocks, I took help, because pride will kill you. Remember that. Don't do something just because I said I was going to do it. I'm going to do it all alone. Leave me alone. And fall off the side of the mountain. You know what I mean. So I don't know where I was going with that, but I did, honor my uncle's 80th birthday doing that. Like I said, I've done a lot of walks, seen a lot of things, been blown off of Mount Washington in New Hampshire. I didn't get blown off, but I got sent back down by the wind. It was strong winds on top. It's 8 miles, 7.5 miles, something like that, to the top, and I got about 5.5 miles before the wind just pinned me into a ditch until I pulled the plug on the inflatable world, and then was buffeted down carrying the world on my shoulders. So it's sometimes it's easy, sometimes it looks easy, and other times I'm just waiting for the wind to give me a break. But you get real philosophical when you walk 10 to 15 miles sometimes in a day about the wind and stuff, because there's been days where the wind's just been beating me to death, and then at the end of the day I meet some person that just that just makes the whole day worthwhile. So I've gotten to the point where I'm real patient, where before I would charge through anything, and I can't make it over. I'll wait till 3 o'clock in the morning to sneak over a bridge. Now I'll take a ride, because I've walked in all these dozens of states and all these hundreds of miles, and I don't need to prove that I can do it. And back to why I'm doing it. I encourage people to give to the Diabetes Association of their choice, but because I'm rolling the world around, I can get deep and say, this is a worldwide movement. Love yourself and go and exercise. And if you love somebody who's prone to diabetes or has diabetes, go walk with them. You might get a hug in too, and you'll be able to walk together longer. So I'll wrap it up with that.